Masithandaze. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of our people. Almachtige God, ons bid dat u gedrende ons vergadering, ons dienende wijsheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou. En dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela Nkosi ilizwe lethu nabantu balo. Umisele Nkosi ukulunga kwiphondo lethu. Nkosi sikelela iAfrika. Gcina abantwana bayo. Khokhela Nkosi inkokheli zayo. Inike uxolo Nkosi iAfrika. All this we beg in your most holy name. Amen. We may be seated. Order, honorable members, and welcome in this sitting. Today we'll be using a hybrid model for the sitting of the House. We have honorable members present in the chamber with the presiding officer and the table staff, and also some honorable members sitting via Microsoft Teams. The chamber has therefore also been hereby connected to the Microsoft Teams as such. Honorable members, I trust that everybody has been connected to participate in this sitting of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament in terms of Rule 1 of the standing rules, with all the members in remote attendance by electronic means. The WCPP remains fully operational, since you will recall before lockdown, during lockdown, we've been operating. We were never on lockdown as Parliament. So our sitting today will be conducted in terms of the standing rules and the directives issued by me on the 17th of April in 2020. Honorable members, please allow me to highlight some of the important directives in this regard. The Secretary and his administration will ensure dedicated technical support during the times of this sitting. The quorum requirements for the sittings are provided for in the Constitution, and the standing rules will be adhered to. Unless there is an indication of unanimous concurrence, voting will take place by members present and entitled to vote to cast their votes as per the ATC issued on the 28th of July 2020. Honorable members who are present both here in the chamber and via the Microsoft Teams have all the privileges and immunities imparted by them, by law to them. Honorable members who are considered to be out of order by the presiding officer, microphones will be muted and called to order. Attendance of members will be recorded by the Sergeant at Arms. Honorable members, I must also bring it to their attention that the Sergeant at Arms and the compliance officer appointed in terms of the relevant disaster management regulations will ensure that we comply with the health and safety requirements as per the World Health Organization and the NICD in terms of COVID-19 regulations. Honorable members who are in the chamber are requested to always maintain social distancing, as we can see here now, and wear their face masks. Like you can see, I'm wearing mine, so that we're able to do so safely. But I need to bring this disclaimer to the honorable members that in this house here now, we do have the screens in front of the honorable members, and we've done this to accommodate members who may wish to take off the mask and speak in order to prevent the spread of any liquids to the next person. As we know that the virus is a very sensitive matter when it comes to our saliva as we speak as members. So you won't be able to spit to the member that is in front of you, even though there's enough social distancing, by the way, among the members here in the House. And I'm raising this for us, honorable members who are not here in the chamber, so that you understand the situation here inside. The beautiful thing is that the Minister of Finance tried it and it worked last week. Thank you very much for that. Honorable members, I need to also indicate to the honorable members that we are requested that as we continue with this sitting, in instances where the directives do not cover a particular eventuality, the standing rules must apply. In instances where the standing rules cannot be applied, the ruling by the presiding officer is final. And I would like to request the honorable members to please assist the presiding officer in this regard. Honorable members, all microphones have been muted. For the honorable members who are participating in the sitting of the House via Microsoft Teams, you are requested to please use the raise hand functionality of the system when you're required to raise a point of order. And you'll also be recognized by the presiding officer in that way, as we've been doing since we started. When an honorable member present in the chamber wishes to raise a point of order, such a member may address the presiding officer as normal, but must mute their mics in the chamber when they have completed their speech. And that allows for the platform to remain audible at all times. Honorable members, I would like to request that as we have been doing, the microphones will be muted by the presiding officer and the staff members that are present here, and you may not be able to speak until you have been recognized to do so. But also, honorable members participating in this sitting of the House via the MS Teams are requested not to sign in to Microsoft Teams on more than one device. We just want to have one member, one device. And I know at times members use more than one device and it doesn't help much with administering the system. And to please adjust the volume on the other device to mute the volume. But also, honorable members in the House are requested not to sign in to the sitting of the House via Microsoft Teams. So remain in the House, don't sign in on the other device. Otherwise, we're going to have two of you, because we're counting here, but also we're counting from the other system for the purposes of quorum in the House. So, honorable members, all these actions are designed to ensure that there's no disruptions during the sitting. I also wish to say to the members of the media present, as you know, honorable members, we've been inviting the media in the system, in the House, since we started off as guests. But I'd like to request the members of the Fourth Estate that please, I know at times it can be tempting when you see members coming up and speaking that you may sometimes want to show your face, but please don't do that, because you will be removed from the House if you do so. And also don't activate your mic. It's not allowed during the sitting. For the purpose of this sitting via hybrid model, I am requesting that the honorable members become sensitive on the use of language. As you know, honorable members, we don't have the translation services, but we do have the translation for the sign language, as you can see, and it has been working very well since the last sitting, which we had successfully here in the hybrid platform. And thank you very much to the honorable members for your support in this regard. But again, I'll request that there is no interjections during the sitting. And that is, again, honorable members, in terms of the directives and the ruling of the presiding officer on the 23rd of April 2020 in our meeting that we held via the MS Teams. And this is also in keeping with the rule number 40 of the standing rules, in order to ensure that there is no running commentary, as that disrupts the order in the House, and it's something that we don't want to encourage. At that point, honorable members, again, you're welcome. And the House is about to begin with the first order. But before I get to that, I see there is a hand of the Chief Whip, and there's also a hand of few other members. Is the Honorable Mackenzie, Kama, Mitchell, and obviously Honorable Wenger, the Chief Whip. Why are these hands up, honorable members?
Mr. Speaker, I think it's probably because the chamber camera does not seem to be working on the online platform, so we can't see you.
Oh, but I see myself.
We can hear you loud and clear, but we can't see you.
All right, thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. We'll address that. The IT team is aware. They've just heard you now, so we'll see how far we can get with that one. And I presume that we won't start with the proceedings until this is addressed. At least we know that they will succeed to addressing it. Mr. Secretary.
Speaker, if I may also on that one.
Honorable Kama.
Also, Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. Also included is I think the sign language translator. Also, we can't see on the screen. I've tried to also check on YouTube. Also, there we can't see the translator. Thanks, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. I can see the translator and I can see myself, so we need to address that, because from the House we can see the screens, they're working. So we'll just take a 5 minutes break to sort this out, honorable members. Thank you very much.
I can't. Sorry, maybe I missed it. What number speaker am I? I'm 3. So is it maybe first? Yeah. Sorry.
Honorable members, can you see me?
No, we can't.
No, still can't see you.
Okay. Okay. FC.
We see you now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Now, you're seeing me in one of the cameras. I've activated one of the cameras, so I hope it remains consistent. That's technology. We learn every day. Thank you. I recognize the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the motion as printed on the order paper in my name.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Are there any objections on the motion being moved without notice, honorable members? No objections. Motion agreed to. Mr. Secretary will now read the order of the day.
Consideration of the principle of the Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation COVID-19 Bill 2020/21 financial year, B4 2020.
Thank you, Borge. Order, honorable member. Honorable members, I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. Perhaps I should begin with a special welcome to the Honourable Nomin Kondlo and the Honourable Deirdre Bartman, who have joined me in the House today and who at least I can see. Speaker, when the storm finally hit, we found that national government had run out of money to fight COVID-19 in South Africa, which is not a surprise, because while we are mobilizing funding to support the fight against COVID-19, national government are mobilizing funding to support zombie state-owned airline South African Airways. We are in such deep fiscal trouble that despite all the kicking and screaming, we have now taken a soft loan with stringent commitments from the International Monetary Fund, which is why President Cyril Ramaphosa was dead wrong when he told us that cost is not the issue when it comes to the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape. And which is why at our moment of greatest need,
Order,
as
Honorable
we
Minister.
faced...
Will you please take your seat, Honorable Minister? Is that a point of order, Honorable Mackenzie?
Yes, Speaker, we still can't see the camera. I know you've switched yours off, but we still can't see the Minister.
Or you can't see the Minister?
And it's the same on YouTube because I got my phone open on the other side.
You want to shame or you want to yam?
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie, for that point. Honorable Mitchell, what's your point of order, sir?
Thank you, Speaker. And the same for the sign language interpreter.
Thank you, Honorable Mitchell. Both the sign language interpreter and the cameras in the house, because she's also there, they're not feeding to your system at the moment, and the IT team is busy addressing that issue. So the only other alternative now would be for us to break indefinitely or to proceed and allow the honorable members here to log using the other devices if they do have, so that you are able to see them. So we'll address that. We'll address that shortly. Thank you very much. And my apologies, honorable members. I do have Honorable Matigizela, the LOGB.
Speaker, it is my humble request that as long as we can hear people, I would request that we proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Matigizela. I see Honorable Marais and Honorable Kama. Honorable Marais, you agree? Thank you very much, Honorable Marais. Honorable Kama, you also in agreement?
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. I think we, exemplary speaker, as we have done in the last sitting, I'm quite sure that there might be some of the deaf community who would want to listen, or who have come to listen, especially on the YouTube platform. But now us being unable to translate that to them, it's quite a disadvantage to the public. So I would request, Speaker, I've seen I think it's Ananda Nel account that was on, but it was black. It was not showing the picture. So I was assuming that maybe that is the account. So for the deaf community speaker, I would like to object to that appeal. That we give at least, even if it's 5 minutes, to afford them that opportunity to be part of us today.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable Chief Whip.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that some members are able to see the sign language interpreter. I have two of our members that have it on their system. So I'm not sure what is happening, but it seems that the sign language interpretation is available for some members. I'm not sure why others are not able to see it.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Let me just get a directive cleared here with my team on the IT component before I take a decision shortly. Just bear with me, honorable members. Honorable members, thanks for your patience. We are almost done with resolving the sign language issue. We'll be able to get that on the system live. However, until further notice, we'll have to proceed with the members that are in the House without necessarily the cameras being active to accommodate them for now. Unless obviously they do as I've done to activate my camera on my device here on the table. So in a minute, I will get the indication whether this has been resolved. I guess in the meantime, I will allow members to have coffee for 5 minutes and then we'll come back. The time is now 1440 hours. By 14:45, we should be ready to proceed. Thank you, honourable members.
That's fine.
was national government, that support for the fight against COVID-19 in the province was funded by slashing the Human Settlements Development Grant by 202.2 million, the Provincial Roads Maintenance Grant by 161.6 million, the Education Infrastructure Grant by 159.4 million, and the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program by 21.2 million, which of course compromises our ability to deliver housing, to maintain roads, to build schools, and to support small farmers in the Western Cape. We have to face the fact, Speaker, that we are effectively on our own when it comes to the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape, which is why we tabled a budget to beat COVID-19 in the Western Cape to support the immediate response to the fight against COVID-19 last week in this Parliament. We have allocated 3.05 billion rand to support the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape. We have allocated an additional 1.8 billion rand to the Department of Health for personal protective equipment, temporary field hospitals, testing and screening and additional bed capacity, 400 million to the Department of Transport and Public Works for the hiring of venues and the purchase of services for quarantine and isolation facilities, and 310 million rand to the Department of Education for personal protective equipment and the sanitization of schools in the Western Cape. We have allocated an additional 84 million rand for humanitarian relief, including for emergency food relief and school feeding schemes across the Western Cape. We funded the allocation by committing 1.4 billion rand from provincial reserves, committing just over 1 billion rand in savings realized from baseline reductions, and committing 605.5 million rand in national conditional grants made to support the response to COVID-19 in the Western Cape, which resulted, after taking into account reductions in national conditional grants of 665.3 million and baseline reductions of 1.2 billion, in a net upward adjustment in the main budget of about 1.1 billion rand in 2021, which is how we have supported the extraordinary work done by government and by the people in government in the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape, which includes, as I'm sure we'll hear today, building temporary hospitals, providing quarantine and isolation sites, distributing food parcels, feeding vulnerable children, keeping older persons safe, supporting businesses, and rolling out Stop the Spread communication campaigns across the Western Cape. Speaker, we estimate that the total finance requirement to respond to COVID-19 will be about 5.1 billion rand, including estimated direct costs of 4.4 billion rand and revenue shortfalls of 720 million rand in 2021. However, there are still significant uncertainties when it comes to the total finance requirement for a couple of reasons. First, we may face a possible prolonged peak or even a second wave of COVID-19 infections in the Western Cape. Second, work has begun on a provincial recovery plan, but the full cost implications still have to be determined in the Western Cape. Second, work has begun on a second. And third, there is always the danger that national government may impose further budget cuts. If the 150 billion rand in the public sector wage bill savings already penciled in over the medium term do not materialize, or if the 230 billion rand in general unspecified savings already penciled in over the medium term are imposed on provinces like the Western Cape, which is why we have decided to implement a three-phase budget process designed to reprioritize expenditure over time so that we can recalibrate our response to the ever-changing environment in the Western Cape. We still have a significant fiscal mountain to climb, and we'll have to reprioritize. We estimate about a further 2 billion rand between now and the next adjustments budget, which takes place, as you know, towards the end of 2020. The letter of intent signed by the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, making commitments to the International Monetary Fund in return for the soft loan, is a clear indication of what is to come, because it states clearly, and I quote, "The October medium-term budget policy statement and the process leading up to the February 2021 budget will propose fiscal consolidation measures that will allow public debt to decline after peaking at 87.4% of GDP in the 2023-24 financial year." Speaker, we may indeed look back and think of these as the easy days, because the really tough fiscal decision on what stays and on what goes are still coming in the Western Cape. Speaker, we face a pandemic which is costing lives and is costing livelihoods, and we now estimate that we will lose 10.2% in gross value add and 167,000 jobs this year in the Western Cape. We have worked around the clock to support businesses and back businesses, not just to open, but to open safely in the Western Cape. We have dealt with 3,887 queries supporting businesses, 1,325 queries supporting workplace safety, and 11,000 COVID-19 safety kits are currently being distributed. We have allocated an additional 14 million rand to support small businesses, to support workplace safety, and to support the opening of the George Airport, all of which are vital to economic recovery in the Western Cape. However, work has begun on a provincial recovery plan, which includes economic recovery and will be funded in the second adjustments budget towards the end of 2020. Speaker, we have to do everything we can to ensure that the vultures who feed off COVID-19 do not settle in the Western Cape. So we have put in place a number of new measures designed to mitigate risks when it comes to the procurement of personal protective equipment, including implementing a new procurement disclosure report in the Western Cape. We will, for the first time, begin making public, regular, standardized reports on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis on the procurement of personal protective equipment in the Western Cape. The first procurement disclosure report, which covers the period 01 April 2020 to 30 June 2020, will be published on our website, www.westerncape.gov.za. We consider the procurement disclosure report as an excellent example of transparency and another innovative step towards maintaining clean government in the Western Cape. So in the end, Speaker, we recommend a budget to beat COVID-19 in the Western Cape to you for debate, because it is a budget that funds field hospitals, that funds isolation and quarantine facilities, that funds emergency food relief, that funds school feeding schemes, that funds schools opening safely, that funds businesses opening safely, and in the end, saves lives and saves livelihoods in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable
Thank you, beautiful.
Minister. Honorable members, order. You are not in the house, so you must maintain the order. Otherwise, we won't hear the rest of the debate. Honorable members, the next speaker is Honorable Minister of Health, Honorable Mbombo.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to indicate that now I don't see anyone except the, I don't see anyone. And therefore I will switch off my camera so that I don't get disturbed. Now you can start now counting my minutes.
It's fine that we see you, Honorable Minister.
Okay. Speaker, history will judge us. Once upon a time, the world was engulfed by a strange, scary, unknown monster that killed as many. It originated from overseas, mostly in first world wealthy countries, affecting mostly the gay, pale males, mostly in America and Europe, and we got to associate it with homosexuality. Here in Africa, specifically in South Africa, we saw it from distance, laughed about it, and distanced ourselves from it. I recall then as a student, when it was introduced in our nursing and medical curriculum at varsity, we will joke about it and why we had to learn about human immune deficiency virus, subsequently an acquired immune deficiency syndrome, when we will never ever see it in our communities. When it came down to our African shores, the monster changed its face from being an overseas to African virus, from a disease of the rich to a disease of the poor, from a disease known as that affecting same sex to a disease that affected the heterosexual virus, from a white man disease to a black African woman's disease, now 3 decades later. South Africa is the largest number of people living with AIDS in the whole world, followed by Nigeria and India. But today we are proud to say we fought against the monster and it is under control, although there's no vaccine. But we have ARVs to mop the floor. We have the ABC, that is abstain, be faithful, and condomize, as a behavioral change message to stop the spread. Western Cape was trend center to be the only province at the time to introduce interventions to prevent mother-to-child HIV/AIDS transmission. Whilst the ANC politicians were fighting among each other, with their president fighting against using science to avoid needless deaths of South Africans who were dying from HIV. And then, fast forward, Speaker, we're in 2020. If you look at the present, history will judge us. On the 2nd of March 2020, Western Cape held a press briefing announcing our provincial state of preparedness to deal with the COVID-19. Noting, Speaker, South Africa's first case was confirmed on the 5th of March in KZN, and then followed by Gauteng. We were put to the test on the 11th of March when we recorded our first case of the COVID. We were ready, we led, as we did, with a fight on HIV/AIDS with a purpose to save people's lives. COVID-19 is a virus that originated in Asia, spread throughout overseas, killing people in first world countries with better health and economic systems than South Africa, not discriminating against any on class, race, education. It was brought to South Africa through international travelers, and now signs show us that it was already seeded in Cape Town even prior to the first case. Our strength as the country's tourism destination became also our weakest link when DECO and National Health, as custodians of airport health and all other borders, failed to be proactive to protect South Africans from the virus that was coming to our shores. We picked up the pieces as Department of Health from their failures by assisting with the screening and testing at the Cape Town International Airports. We went out of our way to trace the contacts from the airline passengers and also everywhere. Just imagine if the virus had affected the whole of South Africa at once, even though it placed the Western Cape under pressure. But the fact that it initially affected one province, as it has been the case internationally, where it affected 1 or 2 areas first, this should have provided other provinces with lessons to be learned and for us to share best practices or worst practices, if need be, could have been avoided for them and also to be ready and be prepared. Did they do, Speaker, in terms of the preparation? Noting, Speaker, that first cases were in other provinces, yet those provinces are still preparing their health system as if it is a national models do show that they will have peaks in July, August, while for Western Cape, where our peaks was going to be in June, July. We were dubbed the Cape Wuhan. We're made to feel we're not part of South Africa and that we're on our own. ANC provincially and nationally were rejoicing at the plight as if the virus was discriminatory. The number of confirmed positive cases was escalating at an alarming rate. This caused great anxiety in the province and beyond. We remained unfazed because we trusted our intervention. We thank our health workers for soldiering on despite the fears of the unknown virus. Indeed, we do have competent, skilled, ethical, driven, and resilient staff. Staff comes first. Without the staff, the system is nothing. We thank all the Western Cape Department staff, not only health, it is through the whole of society and the whole of our government efforts, with civil society, non-governmental, and communities themselves for their support. It is all departments in the province, the local governments, through the councils and the mayors providing support. We saw local communities establishing community-based COVID responses to fight the COVID. Speaker, lastly, I want to thank the Premier and the Provincial Treasury for the budget allocation. For a province once ridiculed and dubbed as the Wuhan of South Africa, up to the level that the President's cabinet even came with the National Health Ministry providing emotional support, you will be surprised that the ANC government never provided any resources, even when the President promised money is not a problem, quote and unquote. Nothing. The zero budgeting by the National Finance Minister was tabled less than a month ago. That is when the country had 111,000 plus cases and 2,205 deaths. It came when Western Cape already had built the field hospital, appointed additional staff, bought the PPEs, etc. Mr. President, you, your national government, you and your party failed the Western Cape. You failed me, you failed the health workers, you failed the people of the Western Cape. 3 months down the epidemic, still the President hasn't delivered on his promise. Connect the dots, Speaker. History will judge ANC on how it first handled the HIV virus and now the COVID. At the beginning, they omitted science, they delayed plowing the resources, but instead they played politics whilst people were suffering. Doesn't sound familiar? Hint, hint, fill up the taxis, but don't worry, social distancing doesn't apply except with family gatherings. Funny enough, National topped the HIV grant with a 500 million for us to use it for COVID, the money that we still to receive 4 months after we have been drowning in the fight for the COVID. Thanks, Minister Mania, for the 1 billion. Tomorrow, I will be tabling how we'll use the department. And they've assured me that the taxpayers' money will be and have been used responsibly where there's no grant. I want to thank the Standing Committee for keeping us on our toes and ensuring that we are accountable for all that we do. Enkosi kakhulu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Your time is up. Honorable members, order. I now recognize the leader of the opposition, Honorable Dagmo.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, MEC Mania wants to give the impression that we are on our own. The reality is that when the President reached out a hand, as he did to all 52 districts across this country, indicating that there will be ministers and deputy ministers available to assist and work in our districts, you had at first an anonymous voice in the Sunday Times describing this as a coup. It later emerged that it was none other than MEC Madikizela who described a clear attempt at cooperative governance as a coup. So it is very rich of MEC Mania to talk about being on their own, but it is in fact this province, true to the legacy of the person that still leads the Democratic Alliance, Helen Zille, to blame and complain National for everything, whereas the hand stretched out by the President was in fact rejected, not by the Premier himself, but those forces within the DA led by Zille, Steenhuisen and Madikizela, who want to describe a genuine attempt to assist as a coup. We then want to ask the MEC, does he reject the engagement and the conclusion of an agreement with not only the IMF, but other multilateral funding organizations to assist us, as other countries have done, to deal with this crisis? Will he reject any funding that comes via the IMF to this particular province? And it is also incorrect to imply that this province has had to make cuts and other provinces have not. This has been something that all of us have faced. The MEC talks about vouchers. I would like to ask him to commit today whether he can tell this House that no family member of any MEC in this province has benefited from the procurement that he talks about. Will he give us, when he responds to this debate, the assurance that no MEC's family member has actually benefited from this procurement? Who actually are the vouchers that he is talking about? He mentions that this report for the 1st of April to the 30th of June will be provided on the website, but he fails to say when. When will the MEC actually publish every single beneficiary of the procurement of PPP in this particular province, PPEs? MEC Mbombo tries to claim credit for work done in regard to HIV/AIDS. What she fails to inform this House that it was in fact an ANC MEC who initiated this particular process. And yes, we had a serious process within the organization, to make sure that our approach to HIV/AIDS dealt both with the issues of prevention, care, and treatment. But the results and the fact that we as a country have beaten that particular pandemic is an indication of the fact that we, in the end, we had succeeded, as we will, in regard to the approach of the pandemic. Neither the MEC, Mainir or Mbombo, mentions this aversion to the support which has been provided through Cuban doctors. Why is it that they cannot still today actually acknowledge the help and support that we've been getting? And I want to say it was this MEC, Noma French Mbombo, who actually sent out mixed messages in regard to the wearing of masks at an early stage of the pandemic, which we had to actively campaign to correct, to ensure that there was a single message in regard to the issue of masks. And also, the reality is that it was us as the ANC who picked up how there was absolute neglect in regard to many of those who needed to go into quarantine in places like Khayelitsha. It was our pressure, it was our constant pressure on the department, which eventually made sure that there was, in fact, the treatment and the care and the support which was actually required. This department, under the leadership of the MEC, initially failed the people of Khayelitsha. But I think we have an opportunity now, on day 125 since the lockdown was declared from the 26th of March, to actually look at this budget, but also reflect on how we have responded as a province. And we as the ANC salute the work of officials in this provincial government, our communities who have come to the fore, initiated and started soup kitchens and spread the message of social distancing, our health workers and our teachers who have sacrificed, some of them with their lives. I believe that this adjustment budget, which sees an extra 1.13 billion, needs to be considered. But we also need to ask ourselves as a province, given the national government's approach to this pandemic resting on three pillars. Firstly, that of prevention, awareness, and behavior change. Secondly, the issue of social relief, which was seen food parcels. And we've seen that the MEC Fernandez presided over an absolute disaster. MEC Mania says 130,000 food parcels were distributed in this province. Which wards actually received and how many were received in each particular ward? That is information which has not been made available. But we forget that it was also our national government who not only increased old age pensions, not only increased the quantity of the child support grant, but also has assisted with teething problems in the beginning, with billions and billions of rands paid out to unemployed workers through the UIF. And we also have a situation now where the SASSA 350 Rand is actually beginning to reach more and more people, as SASSA has also employed field workers to assist those who are not able to actually access the 350 online. Those are clear interventions which have benefited our province. Yet we have MEC Mainir coming here saying we are on our own. All those workers, all those old age pensioners, all those child support grants, all the recipients of the 350 Rand have come from help from the national government. And yet the offer to support the districts in this campaign has actually been rejected by the cabal within the DA that actively opposes the Premier, the cabal of Madikizela, Steenhuisen, and Zille. That is what we are actually seeing. And then obviously the third pillar is that of economic recovery without compromising pillar one. Now, MEC Mainier wants to come to this House and boast about the fact that his department has received, and I want to actually physically quote, 3,833 direct inquiries for assistance. But the issue is, MEC Mainier must tell us what practical support in financial terms has been given to small Black-owned businesses in this province. That's what this House wants to hear. He now talks about a 14 million rand. What actually does that mean in terms of support for small, medium, and Black-owned businesses in this province? If he is talking about economic recovery, the reality is no support in practical terms has actually been coming forth from this provincial government to those small businesses. But I think that what I want to share with this House today is our view as the ANC that there are two factors which have contributed extremely negatively towards the way our province has dealt with this pandemic. And those are very clear. It is clear that the ideological orientation of the DA, which from the outset has been a very narrow so-called herd immunity approach, which has placed emphasis only on so-called economic recovery, even though the facts themselves show that in this province, there's been no support directly to small, medium, and Black-owned businesses in terms of that very economic. So they have emphasized the issue of the economy over the saving of life. And it is this orientation which is in essence anti-worker and anti-poor. It is this DA who actually opposed a living wage, which has actually benefited 5 million South Africans. Instead, it is this DA which had proposed 1,800 rand as an opt-out clause, whereas the national minimum wage initiated and moved by our president has been towards 3,500 rand. But it is this DA who wanted for people to opt out. And that is what they are, fundamentally anti-worker. It was the very deputy speaker of this House who showed the orientation of the DA by actually trying to block labor inspectors from going to a factory where workers had actually complained about their particular safety. Was that deputy speaker ever called to order by the Premier? Was that deputy speaker addressed? No, because that is actually the orientation of the DA, an anti-worker, an anti-poor orientation, because they've decided to jettison the One Nation project of Mmusi Maimane. They've got rid of him. They've identified Steenhuisen, and essentially all they are focused on now is the interests of a small elite who have and actually ignoring the needs of the have-nots. So that's the first problem, the ideological orientation of the DA, which has impacted on our ability to deal with this pandemic. The second political factor is clearly that our response has been impacted on by internal divisions within the DA, sometimes taking on a racial form in many of the rural municipalities, but also straight and clear factional battles, which have spilled over into the media. I referred earlier that it was in fact MEC Madikizela who was not first of all brave enough to describe the president's offer for help to the districts. He called it a coup and then subsequently confirmed that. And this is again a faction within the DA that is working hard to undermine the Premier in terms of attempts to build cooperative governance and to move away from the legacy of blame and complain, which is so easy for people like MEC Mainier now to embrace those politics of Helen Zille. So it is in fact that faction led by Honorable Madikizela who continues to undermine efforts. It wasn't, the Western Cape wasn't treated differently. Every one of the 52 districts across this province have been allocated ministers and deputy ministers to help, but it is this province that actually rejects that and then at the same time claims that we are on their own. The people of this province in the West Coast, in Cape Town, in Boland, in the Karoo and in the Eden district, they want to work in a cooperative way. They see the benefits of having national ministers working in a cooperative way not undermining the spheres of government, but working in a cooperative way. And this is what the DA is objecting to and not wanting to happen. And in fact, that undermines our ability. So you can talk about an adjustment appropriation, you can talk about a budget, but politically, the ideological orientation, the factionalism, and the attempt to deny and to work with national government is actually impacting negatively on the way that we are dealing with this pandemic. So these two particular issues are having a negative effect. Now, I want to talk about some very specific examples. If we look at the health department officials themselves came to the ad hoc committee and explained how the selling of alcohol was impacting negatively on trauma, clogging up hospitals, clogging up casualty wards. And they made a very clear recommendation, in the absence of the MEC, who was not there, that they support the reintroduction on the ban of the sale of alcohol. Yet it is the DA who is making efforts to go to court, making efforts to actually undermine the lockdown. And I think history will show that the hard lockdown imposed at the beginning of this on the 26th of March was actually the correct. So we have the DA undermining the very officials of this provincial government who've understood why it was important to reintroduce the ban in regard to the sale of alcohol. Then we have a situation where people like MEC Madigizela, Steenhuisen and Zille blocked our attempts as leaders of opposition parties here in the Western Cape to meet with the Premier. It was actually for 32 days that they blocked those meetings from actually happening. And eventually those meetings did happen, and I would argue have actually assisted in having a non-partisan approach to many of these particular issues. But unfortunately, despite asking that this similar pattern happens in municipalities across the province, it was MEC Bradell and others who actually undermined the need for mayors of these various municipalities to call the leaders of different political parties. That has also impacted negatively on our ability to deal with this pandemic. And that is why we are seeing the rejection of the DA in Matsikama and Cederberg. We are seeing the KGP and the ANC taking over the district council of the Karoo and all other municipalities. And we are seeing this as a trend because voters actually reject this kind of narrow blame and complain politics of the DA. And these are the signs. And that is why, in his desperation, MEC Bradell now wants to try and use the Office of the Public Protector and Hawks to actively deal with his political opponents within the DA, and then also to launch unsolicited attacks where the ANC is governing and actually delivering to the people. So that was the second. Then thirdly, the shocking treatment of homeless people in the city of Cape Town. Religious leaders, churches had proposed a decentralized approach to the homeless, but clearly MEC Fernandez and the Premier did absolutely nothing to undermine the concentration camp that was set up at Strandfontein, where millions and millions of rands were wasted, whereas there were people that were making genuine efforts to decentralize the approach to accommodating the homeless during the pandemic. And I think it's a matter of shame that an MEC responsible for the vulnerable, the elderly, the homeless, the children, said absolutely nothing about the inhumane breach of human rights which happened at the Strandfontein camp. And she still needs to answer us today. What did she actually do to defend the homeless, which is part of her mandate? Absolutely nothing. And this is a shameful exercise. And they need to actually answer. Then I would like
Honorable, the leader of the opposition, please wrap up.
Then I would like to indicate that we've had a situation where the Department of Transport, through officials of that department, actively tried to persuade Golden Arrow not to help with transport of those refugees that were at the Methodist Church. And the chaos in
Your
regard
time
to
is
food
up,
parcels,
Honorable Dagmo.
this is the legacy, besides
Thank
the budget,
you very
which
much,
the DA must
Honorable
answer
the
to.
leader of the opposition. Your time is up. I now recognize Honorable Makamba Boja. Honorable members.
Thank you, Speaker. The Western Cape's response to the fight against the scourge of the coronavirus pandemic has been uninspiring at most, and the recent tabled budget adjustment points to a government that does not have direction and does not know what it's doing. The Provincial Finance Minister last week preached about a government that has been led by an evidence-based data approach in their fight against COVID-19. Yet they have a Provincial Health Minister who is in the middle of a deadly pandemic that told the public to refrain from wearing the mask, not only because they are ineffective, she said, but also because they are the cause of the spread of the virus. The minister in question is yet to account where she obtained the so-called evidence-based data, as the preaching goes. The provincial healthcare sector has moved one step forward, constructing temporary hospitals for COVID-19, and 2 steps backwards by having the largest hospital in the province, Tygerberg Hospital, being starved of funds in the quest to fight the COVID-19. The hospital is old and it's in a depleting state and has added to COVID-19 transmissions due to its poor air ventilation and not adhering to COVID-19 health and safety protocols, forcing labor inspectors early this month to shut down a number of its units. The budget also does not speak to the inhuman conditions that the 620 additional healthcare workers are exposed to on a daily basis, but not being provided proper financial and safety support. The distribution of 130,000 food parcels in the province with a population of ±7 million people is also shocking, which comes down to only 1.9% of the population in the province which has been provided with the food relief. Furthermore, resolving only 915 complaints of workplace health safety is not enough in a province where call centers only sanitize a computer screen in a workplace once a COVID-19 case is reported and continue to place employees on unpaid leave during the self-quarantine period. The EFF notes that not only does this budget adjustment cut the budget on the housing expenditure, it also makes no mention of the housing reblocking project mentioned earlier this year, which is meant to relocate people from high-risk informal settlement as part of the COVID-19 risk mitigation strategy. The budget does not address combating of COVID-19 in densely populated areas. The EFF welcomes the idea of cutting spending on the compensation of employees, especially in relation to the benefit of high-level executive government employees. With the same vein, we also support the idea by the provincial government to make public the reports of PPE procurement by the provincial government departments as soon as possible, and such information should be easily accessible to the members of the public at large. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Makamba Pocha. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister of Social Development, Honorable Fernandez.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, I think before I begin, I would want to take the opportunity to, through the chair, address the Honorable Doug Moore, who comes to this house and rehashes the same old, same old. There's nothing new or fresh and nothing progressive. I would imagine he's in denial, and there's a quote that says, "Denying the truth doesn't change the facts." I must thank the citizens of the Western Cape for heeding our call and working with us to prevent the spread of coronavirus during this, the longest, hardest COVID-19 lockdown in the world. It is important to note that social workers, child and youth care workers, carers and volunteers are among the millions of essential workers putting their lives at risk on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a government and a department, we had to maintain our services, yet be responsive to the emerging needs that resulted in a reprioritization of funds to address the COVID-19 challenges. Social relief, which is the function of SASSA in terms of the Social Assistance Act, but failed due to budget shortfalls and office closures of SASSA in this province, left government with no choice but to step in. The Western Cape government established a humanitarian relief workstream to coordinate humanitarian relief efforts across the province. A total of 70 million was allocated for food aid in the province. Of the 35 million reprioritized by DSD, 20 million was spent on the distribution of 50,000 much needed food parcels. At this time, there was a deafening silence from National DSD. The Humanitarian Relief Workstream can report that between the province, civil society, the private sector, municipalities, the Solidarity Fund and SASSA, over 130 food parcels and nearly 200,000 daily cooked meals have been provided to beneficiaries in this province during the COVID-19 disaster. The Honourable Doug Moore can go to the Western Cape Government website, and there you will find a map detailing exactly where food has landed in this province across the districts, and we are populating the city data as we go. In terms of older persons, we have supported 300 funded and unfunded old age homes during the pandemic. We have put protocols in place with the Department of Health, who have helped us with screening and testing on site at old age homes. We have made an additional 1.75 million rand available for PPEs, and we also facilitated a decontaminating campaign for deep cleaning of old age homes, with a focus on homes in vulnerable communities and hotspot areas. Honourable Speaker, our ECD sector has not been without its challenges too. The constant flip-flopping by the ANC national government with regards to the gazetting of directions under the National Disaster Management Act caused serious financial distress in the sector. Many livelihoods were lost, and many carers, who are mostly women, whose sole income derives from ECDs, have had to close shop as a direct consequence of the ANC national government being indecisive about how and when to reopen ECDs. It's quite ironic, though, that schools are closed, yet ECDs are now open. Another example of how irrational these directions are. Honourable Speaker, we were the only province where funded ECD kitchens remained open and ensured that 50,000 children were provided with at least one nutritious meal a day. The department reprioritized 10.2 million rand towards the procurement of PPEs for more than 5,000 registered and conditionally registered ECDs to prepare for reopening. Honourable Speaker, it remains important, especially during such unprecedented times, that no one is left behind. To this end, we have allocated 585,000 rand for PPEs and cleansing at 39 residential facilities for persons with disabilities. The safety and protection of our essential workers has also been paramount to our success in ensuring that our services continue with minimal disruption. We have provided 12,000 essential workers with PPE during the lockdown. Through our Victim Empowerment Program, we rendered services to 1,995 victims of crime and violence. And for the period of April to June 2020, we provided crisis containment, court services, trauma counselling, shelter placements. This despite the Honourable Doug Moore spreading fake news on Facebook about no bed spaces being available. Honourable Speaker, our department has also worked with the City of Cape Town and other stakeholders to incorporate an SUD GBV trauma-sensitive intervention at Paint City and Balwell Haven Shelter. Before I conclude, Honourable Speaker, I must address the continuous failure, unresponsiveness and flip-flopping by the ANC national government throughout this pandemic. During the pandemic, the ANC national government has completely forgotten that their core mandate remains serving all citizens of South Africa. Their failure has been explicitly detailed in two UCT research papers by Jeremy Seeking, titled Bold Promises, Constrained Capacity, Stumbling Delivery, and Failure to Feed, State, Civil Society and Feeding Schemes in South Africa in the first 3 months of the COVID-19 lockdown, March to June 2020. I would encourage all honourable members and the media to familiarise themselves with the content which details the mess within SASSA and National DSD. Honourable Speaker, who in their right mind would consider the banning of hot-cooked food by NGOs and private donors at a time when the national government was failing to support the people of South Africa with a much-lauded 350 SRD. Yet the Honourable Doug Moore described me as being hysterical when I voiced my concern. We were vindicated by the court ruling in this regard. I quote from the Bold Promises paper, in short, the emergency social protection measures have entailed disappointingly little, disappointingly late, with a still small chance that they will become permanent features of South Africa's welfare state. And to the Honourable Doug Moore, disability patients from February, March are still
Honorable
waiting.
Minister, you need to wrap up. Your time is up.
In closing, Speaker, the national government has failed to feed the poor is a massive understatement. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, let me start by welcoming the procurement protection measures implemented by the Provincial Treasury to prevent COVID-19 procurement corruption. Our country is being betrayed in the most cynical and disgusting way by businesses, government officials, and political office bearers. We're facing an unprecedented health and economic crisis, and walking amongst us are those who are stealing us blind. The steps taken by the Provincial Treasury to manage pricing, standardize specifications, set up a procurement advisory committee, and publish PPE procurement data on a public dashboard is welcome. The unprecedented crisis we find ourselves in plays itself out in this adjustments budget. The deep cuts and reprioritization of funding is obviously unavoidable. The severe and direct impact on lives and health, economic performance, business sustainability, jobs and household income means we have to prioritize to save lives and provide adequate social relief to those who have been rendered destitute. In this context, I raise alarm at the budget allocation for the humanitarian relief. The Economic Development and Tourism Department forecasts 10.3% contraction of the Western Cape economy and job losses of up to 167,000. The allocation of an additional 84 million rand for humanitarian relief is simply inadequate. Even more, with 11 million of that relief going to the Department of the Premier for a bells and whistles contact center and customer relationship management. The allocation is literally taking food out of people's mouths to create an IT system. The adjustment budget is littered with reallocations made from baseline budget reductions. These reductions indicate how incremental budgeting has created fiscal creep. The current fiscal climate calls for zero-based budgeting processes to eliminate wasteful allocations, identify spending priorities, and recalibrate our government. We must grab the opportunity to scrutinize our funding allocations and get our priorities right. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Speaker. Although we are in trying times, we need to remember the following. One, that we know that this debate is always about life versus livelihoods. But let two members. The one good thing that we had a meeting. I'm privileged to serve on the ad hoc committee COVID-19, and we had a meeting with HASA, the Hospital Association of South Africa, and they told us the excellent service by the Department of Health. So I want Minister Mbombo to tell the department that the private sector is singing their praises and they're doing an excellent job. Speaker, but what is, so that is the pluses and the field hospitals. I think we're doing well as a province, but where we are coming short is that there's too many people going to bed hungry. The most vulnerable of our people do not have anything to eat. This lockdown has shown that we have an unequal society, and those who are poor are poorer. People are losing their jobs. I want the minister to tell us what is he doing to make sure that jobs will be created in the Western Cape. The one thing is that breadwinners lost their jobs and sitting at home and is now in the unemployment queue, do not know what to do. I am not just talking about food parcels. What is this government going to do in order to assist our most vulnerable communities? But Speaker, the other thing that the public is also complaining, I do not understand this, that we cannot visit our families. We cannot have any gatherings with our families, but people are forced.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. You have concluded your speaking time.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. Honorable America.
Thank you, Speaker. In March this year, Speaker, the President announced a 500 billion rand COVID relief package. He said the following: "We will ensure that none of the funds designated for COVID relief are misappropriated." Just last week, the President announced, and I quote, "We will launch a commission to recover the stolen funds intended for COVID relief." Speaker, the context of this statement comes at a time where ANC-controlled municipalities and provincial governments have gone on a corruption-feeding frenzy. 90 notices have been issued by the SIU for investigations. All these notices relate to ANC-controlled governments. In the Western Cape, only one such notice was issued for alleged corruption at the Mitsikama municipality and ANC-led local government. Speaker, COVID-19 is not just a national and provincial issue. The impact are severe at the coalface of service delivery, local government. Councils have to mitigate the unparalleled impact of the pandemic on their communities whilst continuing to offer essential services in the most constrained circumstances, where households struggle to make ends meet. Clinics face extreme pressure, and our residents grow increasingly and understandably impatient in trying to navigate the complex regulations. Nevertheless, councils in the Western Cape have taken great strides to prioritize the greatest need and respond to the difficulties of the day in often record time. Turning to Stellenbosch municipality, we've seen a 3-month payment reprieve on property rates for those homeowners suffering financial pressures. The municipality further expanded its financial payment relief offering and won't be charging any interest on arrear accounts for April, May, and June 2020. Overstrain and biography municipalities similarly allows residents to enter into payment agreements, and for entrepreneurs and small businesses to lease premises are exempted from payment for April and May. In the metro, the city continues to provide basic and essential services to approximately 200,000 informal households. The city has rolled out 31 water tanks in communities where access to water is constrained. These are but some of the groundbreaking work some of the municipalities do from their own budgets and with the support of the province. Speaker, through sound financial planning, cost containment, and the rapid reprioritization, the Department of Local Government has set aside almost 50 million rand for emergency humanitarian aid. This is despite the fact that Pretoria reduced the provincial department's budget by over 70 million rand in equitable share. Speaker, I stand here to assure residents that we will still offer value for their money. After all, this budget is for you, the people of the provinces, because unlike the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, we do not inflate prices of blankets to line the pockets of cadres. Unlike the ANC in the Eastern Cape, we do not skim off profits of food parcels to enrich comrades. Unlike the ANC in Gauteng, we do not grant tenders through the back door to our partners and families. Unlike the ANC in the Free State, we do not let water infrastructure deteriorate so that residents are without water supply. Speaker, public money is just that, the funds of the public. Building on the firm foundations laid by Minister Mania and our ministerial colleagues, we will see to it that every cent is spent where it should be, because unlike the ANC at national government, our checks and balances, our oversight mechanisms, and our ethical commitment works towards the benefit of the residents of this promise. In closing, Speaker, while the DA delivers a budget to beat COVID-19 in the Western Cape, Pretoria uses the crisis to line the pockets of cadres and comrades. My appeal to municipalities is to keep at the forefront of mind that we are by no means out of the woods yet. Councils must protect their revenue and continue to ensure that non-essential spending does
Honorable
not
America.
occur.
Your time is
Cost
up.
containment wherever possible
Thank you.
should be the order of the day. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable America. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Murray.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Speaker. I support this budget. It is a balancing act which attempts to negate the negative effects of provincial paralysis. And this is caused by centralized control. And this led also to policy uncertainty, fiscal indiscipline, and negative economic growth. The forecast is that next year we might have a minus 8% as far as the economy is concerned. Now, if the government is the train, then the economy is surely the rail track on which the train runs. In South Africa, it's resembling a runaway train loaded with mostly non-paying passengers, ill-trained drivers, and running on a severely damaged rail track. Let me remind honourable members that the recovery rate of COVID-19 is 62.5%. At the same time, our economy is sliding towards minus 8%. People will die. It doesn't matter what we do, they die. They die of tuberculosis, diabetes, cancer. But if the economy is derailed, this government will face a revolution. Instead of trying to stop COVID-19, we should think of the living dead. By living dead, I mean unemployment people living in shacks, hunger, lack of housing, lack of good health services, lack of a proper, decent education. I believe and trust that poverty hotspots like Khayelitsha, Delft, Bishop Lavis, Mitchell's Plain will receive the same fiscal attention in the revised MTF budget in 2021. I know this is the first phase. Your second phase, I'm looking forward to November, Minister.
Thank you,
to see
Honorable
what you're going to do. But food security and adequate
Honorable
assistance
Murray,
to
your time is
agriculture
up.
is vitally important. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Murray. I just didn't want to cause a confusion by giving you an announcement that you've got 30 seconds left. It would have disorientated you, Honorable Murray. But thank you very much, Honorable Murray. I now recognize, Honorable members, the Honorable Minister of Education, Honorable Schaefer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When the budget was presented earlier this year, we could not have predicted the turmoil that awaited basic education in our country. COVID-19 has entirely disrupted the school year and severely affected our budget. Compounded with the drought several years ago, the effects on our plans are severe. Real leadership is forged in a crisis, and this crisis has shone a very bright light onto the importance of a functional government to the residents it serves. The Western Cape government has truly led by example under Premier Alan Winde, responding immediately, decisively, and innovatively as soon as this crisis hit us. In contrast, the ANC national government and other provinces have been more concerned with who gets the tenders for PPE, buying scooters, controlling us, and trying to figure out how to destroy what's left of our economy. When schools were closed for a now very extended holiday on the 18th of March, the WCED immediately took steps to respond to the challenge. Our e-learning directorate immediately increased the server capacity on our e-portal to enable stable access to online learning resources. We released a series of quality learning at home resources and weekly lesson plans to assist parents and keep our children learning during lockdown. Many of our schools also sent work packs home with children for this period. I'm proud of the manner in which many of our teachers adapted to the challenge of teaching remotely, actively participating in our department's online training courses to improve their skills, and coming up with innovative ways to connect with learners at home. Before lockdown, an estimated 2.5 million children in South Africa were already experiencing hunger. As the hard lockdown set in, it was clear that the National Department of Social Development was not going to assist them. SASA closed their offices when people needed them most, while their minister was bewailing the fact that she couldn't go shopping. The best way to deploy national ministers, Honourable Dugmore, is for them to actually do the job they are paid to do. So the Western Cape government allocated 18 million rand in emergency funding to feed children through our schools, as we were not permitted to use NSNP funding. Strict safety protocols were of course put in place, and over 2 million meals were served to learners before schools reopened for grades 7s and 12s. Some of our schools even sent schoolwork home with learners collecting meals, assisting those who did not have access to the internet at home. National governments and opposition parties accused us, of course, of spreading the virus, contravening the regulations, and acting against national directives. I'm even facing a criminal investigation. But not once was the focus on the hundreds of thousands of children whose only meal is often the one they get at school. It is shameful that the ANC-run national government and other 8 provinces had to be compelled by a court order to care for the most vulnerable. So much for ideological orientation. Once the phased reopening of schools was announced, we immediately started procuring the necessary health and safety supply, fortunately not relying on national tender processes which stalled midway. The 310 million rand for this purpose in this adjustment budget was taken from our existing funds and is now already over 400 million rand. Unlike in other provinces, all of our schools received their materials on time for the arrival of teachers and each batch of additional learners, and detailed guidelines were made available to support our school staff. We were ready to open on the 1st of June in terms of the Gazette, and did so. In contrast, what has the national government actually done to support us in this time? Well, firstly, they've given us budget cuts. The adjustment budget has cut 159 million rand from the education infrastructure grant. This will severely affect our ability to build new schools and maintain existing schools. The 310 million rand for PPE has had to come from our existing budget, as I said, most of it also being from infrastructure. I do not need to spell out the implications. The President sat here at the CTICC and promised us money, that money is not a problem when it comes to saving lives. Well, it is a big problem when you don't have it. So I'm trusting that now we have received the $7 billion IMF loan, he will make good on his promise and show us the money, or there will be very severe consequences for education in this province. National government has, apart from illogical and inconsistent regulations, also given us a lot of confusion and chaos. Just in basic education, when the first decision was taken to close schools, the national spokesperson contradicted himself multiple times on the same day. We then had the announcement of a decision to delay the opening of schools on the day they were supposed to open. Most recently, we've had the president making decrees with no legislation to back them up and directing grade 7s to return to school on a public holiday. So eager was he to capitulate to the teacher unions. In the absence of legislation and clear direction after this latest announcement, our head of department sent a clear letter outlining what we expect our schools to do, in accordance with the president's announcement. Seemingly not having enough to keep him occupied with the surging rate of infections in Gauteng, MEC Panyaza Lesufi launched a scathing and entirely fictional attack on the Western Cape for sending this letter before plagiarizing it for his own department. The ANC is, quite frankly, a party of flip-floppers, so desperate to appease their alliance partners that they cannot see the irony of allowing taxis to operate at 100% capacity, with passengers packed together in tiny spaces and no monitoring of safety protocols, and with a straight face saying that closing schools is in the interests of learners, against Cabinet's own advisory committee. This pandemic has, quite frankly, shown the clear blue water, and I say blue very deliberately, between a capable state and a failed state. I trust that when it comes to the elections, the voters will remember that at the ballot box. I really, really want to say a huge thank you to every single member of the Western Cape staff in all departments, but especially, of course, in education. They have worked tirelessly, day in, day out, night in, night out. Weekends are non-existent for many of our staff. And I really want to say a very, very big thank you to each and every one of them for the incredible way in which they have managed this horrible pandemic. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now wish to recognize the Honorable Brancase.
Thank you, Speaker. The Al Jamaa is very, very concerned, and a lot of pressure is put on the Al Jamaa by the disabled community with regard to them accessing services with their wheelchairs. The question is, Speaker, does the budget provide advancement for people with disabilities and addressing the imbalances and the inequality of the past? Al Jamaa hereby wants to humbly request the Western Cape government to encourage municipalities to ensure that each ward gets a proper budget. 1 million rand can never be a budget for the average amount of people per ward in the Western Cape province is about 40 to 50,000 people. After all, the Western Cape government plays an oversight role in the province. When the people approach government, the first person that they contact is the ward councillor. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brancase. That was nice and sweet. Nice and sweet. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
May I now recognize Honorable Matigizela, the Minister of Transport and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I want to start by thanking the Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Mindy, and my colleagues for the manner in which they've managed this pandemic. I mean, indeed, Western Cape is the silver lining in otherwise a very dark cloud, which is a South Africa. In his speech last week, the Minister of Finance and Economic Opportunities set out clearly the nature and the extent of the onslaught we faced in the Western Cape once the pandemic started to make its impact felt. He also unpacked the financial provisions which had to be mobilized and committed in order to make it possible for this government to respond effectively in the best interest of the residents and the future of this province. Provisions which at the end of the day have not been bolstered by national support, as the Minister of Finance have said, despite undertakings that they would be. But Speaker, as it is the case with all the real emergencies, our capacity to survive and ultimately move ahead was not dependent solely on our financial and material resources. It needed also the courage of our people from all walks of life and the skillful and innovative management of the available resources. Key to our survival was the optimal functioning of our health system and the successful management of isolation and quarantine processes which operate in support of this system. And we've proven to be a cut above the rest when it comes to those two areas, Mr. Speaker. This was not always easy to achieve, as the overall national lockdown requirements for curfews and the hours within which public transport could operate did not coincide with the working hours of the key frontline health staff. And I do want to take this opportunity and thank my officials who rose to the occasions by making sure that we partner with the transport industry to form a company which is now known Umanyano to provide a service which is called Red Dot. This is the first transport of frontline healthcare workers in the evenings from healthcare facilities to their homes. This was originally introduced due to the regulations preventing the operation of public transport after 7. This is one example of irrational regulations that we've seen from the national government. While these regulations have since been relaxed, the popular service is continuing to operate to ensure that healthcare workers who are so critical in the fight against COVID-19 can get home safely in the evenings. This service is known as Red Dot, as I have said. Mr. Speaker, To date, this service has provided 36,000 healthcare worker trips and transport an average of 720 passengers a day. The service is operational across the province, providing Q&I transport services in the city of Cape Town, as well as in the 5 districts. To date, the service has transported 6,898 passengers to and from Q&I facilities, with 3,876 in the metro and 3,022 outside the metro. My department worked closely with the Department of Health to manage the operations of the service, including close daily cooperation with the Provincial Disaster Management. And Mr. Speaker, I do want now to turn to some of the comments that were made by Honorable Doug Moore. And it is indeed true that the National Command Council under the ANC government is now abusing the Disaster Management Act in order to control us. They are now usurping powers that they would not ordinarily have in terms of the Constitution. And I do want to make it clear to
Let them tell you that.
I do want to make it very clear to Member Doug Moore that I am vehemently opposed to the deployment of ministers and deputy ministers to the districts. We cannot be assisted by people who cannot even assist themselves.
Order,
It's the
honorable members.
message.
Honorable
We cannot
Minister,
be assisted by people who cannot even assist themselves. The ANC government has collapsed this country. Many departments are dysfunctional, and yet the ministers want to come and help us. That is a joke.
Honorable Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
I just want to request for indulgence. I need to address this immediately. Honorable members, we have agreed that there is no interjection, and it's nothing new. On the 23rd of April, we took that decision that we don't interject when another member speaks, because it creates a problem with the audibility of a member. Now, for practical reasons, let us allow Honorable Member Matigizela to proceed in his address, as he is enjoying his opportunity like any one of us. Now, Honorable Matigizela, please proceed. I did mute the time, so you're still on 4 minutes, 26 seconds, so you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I am a constitutionalist, and I want to make it very clear that the Constitution, Schedule 3, 4, and 5, spells out very clear how the different spheres of government should be working together. That is why the Premier of this province wrote to the President seeking clarity as to what exactly are these ministers and deputy ministers are going to do to the districts. Because this notion that they're coming to help us, we don't need their help. They must help themselves. They must help this country and uplift the economy of this country by focusing on their respective departments to do their work. Now, this notion that we need to be helped, it doesn't matter whether they'll be doing this across the country, but I am still saying, Mr. Speaker, that I'm vehemently opposed to that. The two last points that I want to talk about is that I am surprised that the leader of the opposition in the Western Cape didn't say anything about the chaos that we have seen from some of his members in this province. Again, the national government came down here and met with some of the hooligans who are destroying our infrastructure, who are endangering the lives of poor people, and yet the leader of the opposition is saying nothing. Now, is that the kind of government we really want to assist us? Certainly not. Now, if you want to help the poor businesses, through you, Mr. Speaker, if Member Dagmo want to help the poor businesses, the hospitality industry employs more than 350,000 people in South Africa. And yet, when the people are calling for the president to open this industry, the national government unleashed the police to abuse people who were protesting peacefully. And yet the hooligans who are destroying our infrastructure, the police is not doing anything against those people. Now, sir, if you want to help poor people, this industry employs a number of poor people, and that is why we are hell-bent on making sure that we are challenging the government decision to close the industries, because the false dichotomy that is created of saving lives and livelihood is exactly that. And it is very, very important for us how to move towards opening the economy, because as we have seen, shutting down the country under the guise of the lockdown will not stop the spread. And that is why it is important for us to be vigilant in South Africans and see this for exactly what it is. The attempt by the ANC government to extend its
Thank
hand
you,
and grab
Honorable
power
Matigizela.
by hook or crook. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Your time is up. Thank you. Honorable members, now coming back to the House and give the opportunity to the Honorable Minister of Finance. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to begin by thanking all honourable members who have participated in this debate for their contribution to the debate on this special adjustments budget in Parliament. I think the debate, if you listen carefully, has demonstrated the extraordinary achievements of government and the people in government when it comes to the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape. We have heard today from the ministers about building temporary hospitals, providing quarantine and isolation sites, distributing food parcels, feeding vulnerable children, keeping older persons safe, transporting health workers, supporting businesses, and rolling out huge Stop the Spread communication campaigns across the Western Cape. And I would like to thank the honourable members who have acknowledged today what has been achieved by government and the people in government in the Western Cape. I would then like to respond to some of the concerns raised. First, the Honourable Mkamba Bhatia is concerned about workplace safety. Speaker, we have done an enormous amount of work supporting workplace safety. We have made available health guidelines and information materials on preventing and managing COVID-19 infections in the workplace. We've assisted businesses to find personal protective equipment suppliers through our PPE marketplace. We have provided employees with frequently asked questions that advise them on how to stay safe in the workplace, and we've provided employees and customers with a mechanism to report businesses that are not following the necessary health guidelines to stop the spread of the virus in the Western Cape. And to date, we have received 1,322 complaints of business non-compliance via our online platform, of which 960 or 72% have been resolved. The Honourable Brett Heron is concerned, as I am sure all members of this House are concerned about the question of humanitarian relief. And I wish to ensure him that the provincial government are working on a provincial recovery plan. And key to that provincial recovery plan, of course, will be nutrition, which is a desperate need across the Western Cape. The Honourable Christians is concerned about what we are doing on jobs. And Speaker, I wish to reassure him that we have done an enormous amount to support business and support the economy in the Western Cape. We have, where we think sectors can open safely, we have worked hard with national government to get these sectors to open, and we've had some success with e-commerce and the construction sector in the Western Cape. We've set up a COVID content centre with our partners at Westgrow and the City of Cape Town to provide support and advice to business. We've launched a COVID-19 support finder, which helps business navigate and access the many financial relief packages available to them. And our red tape reduction unit is assisting businesses with red tape related issues, especially navigating some of the absolutely mad and arbitrary regulations imposed on businesses in the Western Cape. And to date, we have over 139,000 visitors who have visited our Support Business website. We've dealt with over 2,639 queries have been dealt with by our COVID-19 content center. 6,888 businesses have used our COVID-19 support finder, and over 1,248 queries have been dealt with by the red tape reduction unit. That, Speaker, is not to mention the fact that last week we announced a tourism product development fund which commits a total of 5 million rand to support new and existing tourism products and experiences. And in this special adjustments budget, we've allocated an additional 14 million rand to support small businesses, to support workplace safety, and to keep the George Airport open, which is vital for the economic recovery of the Western Cape. And on top of that, we have begun work on a provincial recovery plan, which includes economic recovery and which will be funded in the second adjustment budget towards the end of 2020. The Honourable Peter Murray makes a passionate speech, but I can assure him that under the leadership of Premier Alan Winde, there's absolutely no provincial paralysis in the Western Cape. And of course, the problem with the train to which he refers is that it is a gravy train driven by national government in 3 directions simultaneously and is going absolutely nowhere in South Africa. The Honourable Brinkhuis is concerned about people with disabilities, and I can assure him that this government is committed to ensuring that people with disabilities are supported in the Western Cape. Which, Speaker, brings me to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Cameron Duggan. Let me assure him that we are on our own when it comes to the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape. What we don't need is ministers and deputy ministers being allocated to districts. What we do need is financial support, preferably 2 billion rand before the next adjustments budget, which is what was promised by President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Hospital of Hope at the Cape Town Convention Centre, and which was not delivered. Let me also assure the honourable member that we support the loan from the IMF, and we hope that part of that loan is allocated to the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape. To the extent that that loan may have been rejected or indeed opposed, it was rejected or opposed by his own party, who were dragged kicking and screaming to an awkward embrace with the IMF. When it comes to procurement, we are certainly committed to doing more and going further than any other province in order to mitigate risks. And for that reason, we will be publishing our procurement disclosure report, which is ready and will be published as soon as the provincial website is up and running in the Western Cape. I also wish to assure the honourable member that we've allocated significant funds to support small businesses, including an additional 9 million rand to support small businesses in this budget. And he must know that we are currently distributing 11,000 COVID-19 safety kits across the Western Cape. Speaker, I'd like to conclude then by reminding the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Cameron Duggan, that when we look back, and when indeed history is written, his party and national government refused at the moment of our greatest need to feed desperate and hungry children through feeding schemes across South Africa, which was not only shameful, it was immoral, and it will never be forgotten by the people of South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Yeah.
Thank you, honorable members. That concludes the debate on the consideration of the principle of the bill. I have to announce to the House that there are currently 37 honorable members present and entitled to vote, and therefore the House correct. We have 34 members in the virtual platform on MS Teams. We have in the House here in the chamber 3 honorable members, and that is the 37, the sum of 37. Are there any objections to the approval of the principle of the bill?
No.
Yes.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you, honorable members.
No objections.
Thank you. Now that there are objections,
We
thank
object
you.
against this budget.
Thank you very
Big
much.
yes.
Order.
A big yes.
ANC objects.
In order
A
for
very
the
big
honorable
yes.
members to have their respective votes on the above mentioned bill recorded correctly, so that the noes and the yeses can be correctly recorded, I will require the honorable chief whips of the respective parties to indicate their respective parties' position on the bill. I will start with the chief whip of the DA, and I wish to request you, honorable chief whip, to please indicate whether the DA is in support of the principle of the bill or not.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic Alliance is in support of the principle of the bill.
Thank you, honorable chief whip. Are there any individual members of the DA who wish to record a vote different to the one of the party?
No.
Okay, so the answer is no. All right. Now, honorable members, I wish to request the chief whip of the ANC to please indicate whether the ANC is in support of the principle of the bill or not. Honorable chief whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ANC is not in support. Thank you.
Why?
So the answer is no. Are there any individual members of the ANC who wish to record a vote different to the one of the party, honorable chief whip?
No.
No.
No. Thank you, honorable chief whip of the ANC. With the parliamentary leader of the EFF indicate to the House whether the EFF is in support of the principle of the bill or not.
Yes, we do support.
Thank you, honorable Twego. Will the EFF indicate whether there are any of the members of the EFF that wish to vote otherwise? No. Honorable Chief, yes. Honorable the leader of the EFF? Honorable the leader of the AF, is there any of your members that wishes to vote against the party?
No.
Thank you, honorable the leader of the EFF. I now move to the Good Party. Will the honorable member of the Good Party please indicate whether the Good Party is in support of the principle of the bill or not?
Speaker, Good is in support of the principle of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. I now move to the ACTP. Honorable Christians, how's your vote?
Speaker, the ACTP support the principle of the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable Marais, how is your vote? How should it be recorded?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Marais. Honorable Brenkes, how should the House record your vote?
Honorable Speaker, Al Jama is not in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Your not in support has been recorded. Honorable members, now we'll do the counting. I'm waiting for the table staff to provide me the figures. Doing the mathematics, we'll see whether it's standard grade or higher grade. Thank you, honorable members. I now have the results of the vote. There is 27 votes for the vote, and that is the honorable members who wish to support the principle of the bill, 27, and the honorable members who wish to oppose the principle of the bill, and that is 10. And the yeses have it.
Yebo.
Thank you, honorable members.
Yeah.
Now the vote has been carried. Now, honorable members, the names of the individual members present and their support or otherwise for the question before the House will be recorded in the minutes of the proceedings, and in this case, the parties will be recorded to ensure a full record of the voting of the bill, on the bill. The Secretary will read the bill.
Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation COVID-19 Bill.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Honorable members, the Secretary, now that he has read the bill, will now move to the second order. I now see that the House will deal now with the separate votes from now onwards. Thank you, honorable members. Let me take this moment, honorable members, just bear with me. Thank you, honorable members. The Secretary will now read the second order of the day.
Consideration of report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Bill B9 2020 NCOP.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Honorable members, the House received the report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP not to support the bill. This mandate has been sent to the NCOP. I will now afford an opportunity to make declaration for the parties to do so if they so wish. I will give 3 minutes to each member, to each party for these purposes. I now recognize the EFF. In fact, let me start with the African National Congress.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Can you hear me, Mr. Speaker? Honorable Speaker?
Yes, we can hear you, member.
We can hear you, member Mbimbi.
The speaker is not responding.
We can hear you, honorable member.
Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The African National Congress in the Western Cape Legislature supports and thanks the national government for the additional money and budgetary.
Hello.
Thank you, Honorable Mbimbi. We are listening.
Okay. Can I start again, Mr. Speaker, because I was distracted? With your indulgence,
someone is playing some soul music behind you. Just ask them not to. I will give you the opportunity,
Honorable. Not in my environment, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Mbimbi, I will give you the opportunity I just wish to draw the attention of the honorable members to please mute your microphones. And the administration, please just mute the microphones of all members who are not scheduled to speak at this moment. Please proceed, Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The African National Congress in the Western Cape Legislature support and thanks the national government for the additional money and budgetary shifts as reflected in the Division of Revenue Bill. These interim budgetary shifts were specifically tailored to deal with the challenges of the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. These shifts further shows in expenditure that will seek to address the health and medical emergencies that were brought about by the coronavirus pandemic. This quick action by the national government is an indication and an illustration of a caring and developmental national government that has intervened in times of need. The interim budgetary shifts also make provision for an economic recovery plan so as to achieve inclusive economic growth. Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic as a disease knows no political boundaries. It is in this regard that we would like to warn and caution the provincial government against the politicization of the services, especially social and food relief services during these trying times. The national government has embarked on an inclusive, consultative, and participatory processes in arriving at these expenditures. To this effect, the NCOP, through the joint meeting on standing and select committees on appropriation, has called a joint meeting. This meeting further invited all the provincial standing committees on finance in all the provincial government, the provincial legislatures. The Western Cape provincial government was also represented there. So we were there, Mr. Speaker. We were part of the discussion. It was interesting to find out that from other provinces, they have actually taken proactive measures in working together with the national government. They did not wait for the national government and always keep on blaming the national government. Instead, they initiate activities and initiate expenditures and do that in consultation with the national government. It is in this regard, Mr. Speaker, that we are unequivocally expressing our support for this division of revenue bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. I now wish to record that the ANC has done their own declaration. I now move to the EFF.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The EFF is very clear in support of division of revenue bill, wholeheartedly, knowing that we are in serious times of pandemic and any form of assistance that is required, we as the EFF are fully behind it. We are allowing governments to be able to be part and parcel of the leadership of this process. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Taego. The declaration of the EFF has been recorded accordingly. I now recognize the Good Party.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, we support the bill and do not support the Budget Committee report. The Finance Minister's special adjustment budget speech, when he tabled the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, made it absolutely clear that our country's finances are in dire straits. Tax revenue projections are down, debt is up, debt will be all-consuming and overwhelming if we don't stick to the extraordinary narrow path that can lead to financial sustainability and a budget surplus. If our national government can implement the structural changes identified in the economic strategy for South Africa adopted last year, then we will weather the storm eventually. It will be a tough and narrow path we have to traverse, and government will have to demonstrate its real commitment to reviving our economy if it expects the people of South Africa to keep the faith. The government's commitment to stabilizing debt, improving spending patterns, and pursuing economic revival is necessary. There are a number of commitments and policy statements that we welcome. The stabilization of debt at no more than 87.4% of GDP in 2023-2024, the target of a primary surplus by 2023-24, and that we will pursue an infrastructure-led economic growth plan. Investing in infrastructure will stimulate the economy, create jobs, and address the infrastructure backlog. And there is historical precedent for an infrastructure focus. United States President Roosevelt's New Deal helped the USA recover from the Great Depression of the 1930s and put millions of Americans to work. The government's economic and social response to the COVID-19 is testing the limits of our fiscal envelope. The expansion of the business loan guarantee scheme, referred to as a business restart program, is welcome. It is necessary to stabilize and save the economy, business, and employment we already have. State support and intervention is critical for this. The allocation to the Social Development Department for social relief is also welcome. However, if the objective is to forge a new economy and a new global reality, then we cannot abandon jobless South Africans stuck in poverty in October by withdrawing the social grant. Those who are unemployed and do not qualify for any financial support must be included in our new economy. No South African should be expected to live with zero access to any income. Poverty alleviation through a basic income grant must be part of the new economy. A basic income grant must be part of the restructured South African economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. The Good Party's declaration has been recorded accordingly. I now recognize the ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the ACDP supports the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill. Yes, Speaker, it's almost like the DA opposing it. It's almost like cutting off the hand that feeds you, or throwing out the baby with bathwater. Speaker, I know, and we know that there's a lot of difficulty, and we're unhappy with the national debt. We're unhappy with debt service costs rising to 236 billion rand, and this is scary. But, Mr. Speaker, if we reject or oppose, then we're saying we don't need the assistance of national government, and that is not so. We need the assistance. We can criticize them, but we need the money, because we know this lockdown has showed us that the most vulnerable are the ones to suffer. The most vulnerable are the ones that goes to bed hungry. So the ACDP supports the Division of Revenue Bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. The declaration of the ACDP has been recorded accordingly. I now recognize the Freedom Front Plus. Honorable Murray.
Thank you so much, Speaker. The Freedom Front Plus reject the Division of Revenue Bill in that it does not sufficiently provide for the increasing influx of indigent job seekers to the Western Cape, providing for the pressure on housing, education and health services. It's causing great pressure on our health services, on education and on housing. An equitable distribution of revenue to provinces must provide also for changes in economic patterns and economic migration, and to increase poverty in the provinces to which these people migrate. We cannot solve the problem of joblessness and unemployment if we stick to a system that does not provide for transfers between provinces in the case of such interprovincial migration. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. The vote of the FF Plus has been recorded. The declaration of the FF Plus has been recorded accordingly. I now recognize Al Jamar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. The Al Jamaa wants to welcome the extra cash from the ANC in our very poor Western Cape province. And in the same breath, the Al Jamaa calls upon the Western Cape government to decentralize their approach in the province and very speedily bring an end to have and have-nots. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Prenkes. The declaration of the Al Jamaa has been recorded accordingly. And honorable members, I now recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Deirdre Bartman.
You are recognized, Honourable Bartman.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We today debate the report of the Budget Committee of the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill. Firstly, Speaker, I would like this House to note that we received 3 working days from the National Council of Provinces in order to deal with this particular bill. Further, Speaker, in terms of the reasons why the Budget Committee has recommended not to support this bill, is that the President promised provinces, all provinces, a total of 20 billion rand in terms of funding for COVID. And later it was revealed that the Western Cape, as well as the other provinces, had to find money in its own budget to fund COVID-19. The term reprioritizations is a fancy English euphemism for budget cuts. In the Western Cape alone, we had to find just over 2 billion rand to cut from our own programs in order to put money towards the COVID-19 relief, money which should be funded by the equitable share. There was further 0 change to the Western Cape equitable share. So to Honourable Mvimbi and to the ACDP, I would like to ask, what extra money? Further, there is a net decrease of almost 57 million rand in grant allocations to the Western Cape, including education infrastructure grant of 160 million rand, provincial roads maintenance grant of 162 million rand, 2 agriculture grants totaling 30 million rand, and the human settlements grant. 100% of the cuts from human settlements in the current Western Cape budget comes from national through grants and the reductions on the baseline through the equitable share. Further, Speaker, we received 25 million rand for drought relief, but this does not take into consideration the 50 million rand the Western Cape had to take last year from its own provincial revenue fund in order to support drought relief, and is wholly inadequate for the drought assistance we need to do in the Western Cape. Honourable Speaker, in terms of the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, it is immoral. It butchers provincial budgets. Ramaphosa needs to give us a refund. We deserve our fair share of the equitable share funding. Ask this House to ratify the decision of the Budget Committee not to support the Division of Revenue Amendment. Thank you, Speaker.
Yeah. Thank
President
you,
Ramaphosa.
honourable members. Thank you, Honourable
Order,
Bartman.
Speaker. Order, Speaker.
Order, honourable members.
Order, Speaker.
Is that a point of order?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order, Honourable Chief Whip of the ANC?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the House started, you set out guidelines in which all of us must abide by. Now, I have consistently listened and heard how the Chief Whip of the DA continues to yell, yeah, while she's not even sitting in the House. And it's troublesome that for some the rules apply and for some it doesn't. So I want you to be consistent and condemn the behavior, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable the Chief Whip of the ANC. The Speaker appreciates the opportunity to be assisted by the Chief Whips whenever this occurs. So thank you very much for that. And the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance, please assist the Speaker. Do not go on that tangent of the heckling or appreciating loudly, Chief Whip. because it does indeed cause a bit of disruption in the system. I hope we are on the same page in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I wasn't interjecting because the member had concluded, but yeah, I take your point. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Thank you, honorable members. Now, honorable members, in terms of the declarations, we have concluded the speakers from the respective parties. I have to announce that there are currently 36 honorable members present and entitled to vote, and the House is therefore correct. We had 37 when we dealt with the previous item, which is the bill itself. Now we have 36. One of the honorable members is not in the House, and we know who the member is. She has informed the House in that regard. Now, I would like to put the question to the House. Are there any objections to the adoption of the report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Bill, the Revenue Amendment Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the National Assembly, in the National Council of Provinces, not to support this bill?
No objections.
Are there any objections?
Yes.
No.
No objection.
Okay. Thank you, honorable members. Order. Order, honorable members. Seeing that there
No
are
objections, Honorable Speaker.
Order.
From Al-Jama, no objections. Thank you, Speaker.
Oh, no objections. Thank you, Al-Jama. You have changed your declaration. Thank you very much.
Remember, Maria, what did you say?
No.
Now, in order for the honorable members to have their respective votes,
or against
order, honorable members.
We're about to find out.
Al-Jama is for the bill. Al-Jama is for the bill.
Thank you, honorable member Brenkes.
Yeah.
We have recorded your voice there, but we are going through the process now. Please pay attention, honorable members. In order for the honorable members to have their respective votes on the above mentioned adoption of the report on the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP, not to support this bill. In order for this to be recorded correctly, I will inquire from the chief whips to indicate their respective parties' opinion on the adoption of the report. Now, this is an opportunity for the respective parties through their chief whips to indicate whether they support this report or not. Now, I will ask the chief whip of the Democratic Alliance whether the DA will indicate whether their support for the adoption of the report is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic Alliance supports the adoption of the report, to not support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Are there any members from your party who wish to oppose your view?
No.
Are there any members of the DA who wish to have a different vote against the party's vote?
No one.
Mr. Speaker.
All right. Thank you very much. I wish to put the question to the ANC. Are you the Chief Whip of the ANC? Will you please indicate whether the ANC is in support of the adoption of the report or not?
The African National Congress supports the bill and is not in support of the report by the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable the Chief Whip of the ANC. I would like to put the question to the ANC whether are there any members of the ANC or member who wish to vote differently from that of the party?
No ways.
Thank you, honorable members. Will the parliamentary leader of the EFF indicate whether the EFF is in support of the adoption of the report or not?
The EFF supports the bill and is totally against the report of the committee.
Thank you, Honorable the parliamentary leader of the EFF. Are there any members? Is there any member of the EFF who wishes to vote differently?
No.
No. All right, thank you. Will the honorable member of the Good Party indicate his vote?
Speaker, we do not support the report from the Budget Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Heron. Will the ACDP indicate their vote?
Speaker, the ACDP is against the report of the Budget Committee and supports the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Christians. Will the FF Plus indicate the vote in this particular report?
The FF Plus supports the recommendation of the committee.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. The Al-Jama, Honorable Brenkes.
Thank you, Speaker. The Al-Jama supports the bill and we don't support the report of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, I'm now waiting for the votes and will announce the votes accordingly.
Can the Honorable Murray correct his vote, please?
Thank you, honorable members. The votes, I have to announce that there are 23 votes that supports the adoption of the report, not to support, to confer to the NCOP delegates not to support the bill, and therefore there are 13 that are opposed to the adoption of the report, and that then suggests to the House that the report has therefore been adopted and the report will be forwarded to the NCOP and the mandate accordingly. Honorable members, the names of the individual members. Honorable members, the report of the Budget Committee, let me read this for the records. The report of the Budget Committee of the Division on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill B9 of 2020 NCOP has therefore been adopted. That's the report. The names of the individual members present and their support, and in this case, the parties too. Otherwise, for the questions before the House will be recorded in the minutes of the proceedings to ensure a full record of the vote and also on the consideration of the report on the Budget Committee on the division of the Revenue Amendment Bill B9 of 2020 NCOP. Now, honorable members, let me just indicate to the House that tomorrow we will be starting at 10 o'clock. Tomorrow is Thursday, the 30th, not the 29th, the 30th. We're starting at 10 o'clock, and I would like to request the honorable members to remember this. Now we have reached the end of the sitting, and I wish to thank all the honorable members for their presence and the entire stakeholders in the province for viewing this sitting and for your participation. The House is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.